Hello and welcome to In the Game, Qatar's first sports podcast. Today we have, as always, a very special guest. But today's special. He's just given me some advice on how to stop being nervous at the beginning of the podcast. So at this moment in time, I'm just slipping myself into a nice warm bath so that I can relax and I can give it my best for our guest today. So today, Radzi, it's an absolute privilege and an honor that you've come on our show today, because it's just, I can't believe it. I still can't believe it today. So I'm going to kick it off, and I'm sorry if you can introduce yourself and you can tell everybody about your story until now. With everything.
Yeah, well, my name's Radzi, full name Radzi Chinyanganya, which isn't the best thing to say live on auto cue. And I'm a television presenter from the UK, and I started my career officially. My first full-time presenting job was in 2013. Prior to that, it was 3 years of working for free to get an opportunity, not sure if it would ever happen. And that really came as a result of being a failed skeleton bobsleigh athlete. So for 3 years prior to that, I'd finished university, I'd graduated, and I wanted to do something different. I wanted to achieve something. I wanted to do something bigger than myself. And so I wanted to become a Winter Olympian, represent my country in skeleton bobsleigh. And I was trying to make the Winter Olympics 2014. And I'm not sure if you saw the Winter Olympics in 2014. I wasn't there. So I failed in that, and that became clear around 2010. And so I kind of parlayed everything that I'd learned from a sports side of things, from a discipline side of things, from a work ethic side of things, and just shot for the second unicorn, which was presenting. And I managed to make that work for myself, and I've subsequently worked for a variety of channels, a variety of shows. And I think I may have just reached my peak today, Steve, being live on your podcast.
You're so good. I'm just over the moon, honestly. I'm over the moon. You've really kind of condensed that, and you kind of give us the really good bits, because I've got to say this as well. Let me just say this. My granddaughter's watching, and she loves the movies. So when I told her that I was going to get me on the show from Kung Fu Panda 3, she was like, "Oh,
yes."
Happy. And I'm sorry to talk on this. It's a sports podcast, but how did that happen?
So that happened. I was working on a show called Blue Peter, which, in case you aren't British, is a show that's been around for the best part of 62 years. So it's a real British institution. And whether you are 80 years old or 80 years old, the chances are you've probably heard of it and seen it, and you have an era. And by that I mean you have your three presenters that you remember, whether it's John, Val and Pete that people of a certain age will definitely remember, or perhaps whether it's the current cohort that kind of replaced me. It's a real privilege to be part of it. And so one of the many films I got to do with them was out in LA, and they said, "Would you like to have a voiced part in Kung Fu Panda 3? Now, you don't need to answer a question like that. You just go to wherever the location is. And so I've got to be honest, my part was that, I'd say, brief, that even my mum struggled to identify when I actually appeared in the film. But when your name in the credits appears above Jean-Claude Van Damme, you think, yes, we have made it. And it was so much fun recording it. We had to do sound effects and things like that. And just to be part of a movie of that scale, I mean, it's off the charts, Steve. It's off the charts.
I've got to be honest. I kind of, and no matter, we're going to ask about your sporting prowess and all the things that you've been involved in. But that must have been a real highlight. That had to be a real highlight.
Yeah, it is. It's funny because in TV, I'd say you do things which, when you explain them, sound so unique, so special, so incomprehensible in some ways. But when you're doing it, it can become quite ordinary. And all I mean by that is, in the same way that I imagine if you ask Usain Bolt what it's like to compete at a final, like to break a world record, he probably wouldn't talk about the crowd during the actual process of running. He probably talks about specific cues, whether it's high knees, relaxation of the shoulders, drive phase, hitting certain angles. And so it's kind of similar when you are presenting, because you're not sat there going, "Yes, look at this," like a 10-year-old Radzi would do. You're a little bit more measured, and you're trying to think, right, how can I tell this story better? How can I get the most out of this person? How can I create jeopardy in this story to make it a more captivating one? So when I look back, I really enjoy some of the stuff. And there's a guy who's one of my bosses in BBC Athletics called Ali Mack. And when I first went out to Beijing for the World Athletics Champs in 2015, he said something to me which has kind of really resonated and penetrated so many things that I've been part of. And it's that he said, it's going to be hard work, it's going to be long hours, it's going to be very humid, it's going to be very hot. A lot of the time you'll be doing stuff with very little notice and you'll probably think that wasn't my best work. He said, and when you come back, you'll retrospectively love it. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you won't love it when you're there because you won't have time to. Your body won't be in a position to be able to love it. It's not until you've thought back to what you did, you'll say, man, I had a blast. And that's so true of so many things that I've gotten to do and been lucky enough and privileged enough to do, is that Kung Fu Panda 3, we had Korean food with the producers for lunch. That's only a minor thing, but looking back, what a privilege, what an honour to work with people that have worked with some of the greatest voices in film broadcast. That's the sort of stuff I look back on and think, you know what, for a boy from Wolverhampton, that's all right by me.
And you just said that you're from Wolverhampton. I'm going to go back. You were born in Oxford,
Yes.
and then you were brought up in Wolverhampton. And we said this before the show, just 15 minutes before the show. Where's your accent? Where's the Wolverhampton accent?
Yeah, I know people in this area ask me that an awful lot. So, born in Oxford, which is an accent not that dissimilar to yours. It has to be said in Oxford.
Oh, come
So
on.
West.
Oh, yeah, Oxford. I thought you meant Wolverhampton there. And nothing against Wolverhampton people, let me tell you. But what West Country?
They're some of the best people, let me tell you. And then mum from Scotland, dad was from Zimbabwe. And then I've worked in Manchester, I've worked in London, I went to university in Loughborough University, and that's where I met one of my closest friends and my former coach, who's also been on your show, Paul Osei-Owusu, aka Ozzy, as everybody in Loughborough knows him. And so I've just got a real multitude of influences that have turned into a mush of sort of nothing specific, but you can't quite pin me down with the accent.
I love your accent because it kind of I do honestly, and I think to myself. So you were in Wolverhampton. When did you realise that you wanted to either go into sport or presenting? Have you always wanted to be in presenting, or was it the sport that was the one that was the driver?
So I'll be totally honest, and I wouldn't normally be. So what it actually was is when I was in sixth form in school, so between the ages of 16 and 18, if I had £1 for every girl that was interested in me, I would have had £0. And I remember being in a disco or a nightclub, whatever you want to call it, but really it was for people of my age. I remember being there and thinking, this clearly isn't for me. Whatever it is about this environment, that's not where I'm going to shine. So the idea of assimilating and affiliating in that field wasn't of any interest. So I know in Qatar, for example, people don't drink very often. I've never drunk in my life. And that's been again because I thought, why would I want to go down a field if I can't be the absolute best? And it was that sense of, right, I can't be the best in the field of girls, I can't be the best in the field of drinking, can't be the best in the field of 101 different things, but I can potentially if I find something that I'm good at, that I'm special. So I then went on a sort of mental quest to find something that I thought I would shine in. And it started in sport and then it transitioned into TV. And I'm so grateful that I had that because although it's been very tough at times and I've been very low at times on that journey, and Paul Ozzy was there throughout that journey, it would never have happened if I hadn't had that, I suppose, trauma slash rejection from a relatively early age.
And I know that Paul, I told you as well, I was talking to Paul, and Paul's watching right now, and Bosco. Bosco, thank you very much for watching, Bosco. You're one of our top fans. You're a brilliant guy, honestly. He's fantastic. Does so much here in Qatar, Bosco. Brilliant guy. But going back to Paul, Paul was telling me that he said, ask him about what it was like in university, in the stage where you were cleaning up the halls, you were just earning some extra money so that you could do your extra activities, and people they were laughing at you as such and saying, yeah, dream on. But how did you get over those things? Tell us a bit about it.
So I was trying to do skeleton bobsleigh, and at that point to fund it, I was working essentially in the leisure centres that they have available at Loughborough, and that would see you start the day with cleaning the bins, changing the bins, doing quite menial tasks, I guess you'd call it, and as a result, you then become known as the guy that is the cleaner. And then when I then forayed into television, that was still my job, and I spent 3 years of jumping on megabuses for £1 to go to meetings in London to pitch ideas that would invariably get cancelled. I spent that money that I earned making show reels, which is essentially footage of myself doing presenting, so I could use that as a bit like a CV, a curriculum vitae, a resume to hand out to people and say, this is what I can do. And it was the lowest time of my life without a shadow of a doubt, because if somebody said, Radzi, it's month 1, in month 36, you will get your full-time job that you'd always wanted. If you asked 10-year-old Radzi what you wanted to do, he'd have said to become a Blue Peter presenter. But at that point, you don't know if it's going to happen. I applied for the Blue Peter job about 7 months into that process. I got down to the final 3. They chose nobody in the end. I entered a competition on a radio station called Kiss FM. 25,000 people entered. I came top 25. The following year, and bear in mind, if you won it, you got a contract with them for the year as an actual Kiss DJ with your own show. The following year, top 25,000, then top 25, then top 10, top 5, I came second, close but no cigar again. And there are so many scenarios and anecdotes I could give you about that, of being close but no cigar. And the thing is, I was essentially getting older in Neverland, where people never get older, because you have a new cohort that come in that are 18, and you're no longer 18. And then people say, well, what is it you're doing? Why are you still here? And I would say, well, I want to become a presenter. And you could see it in their eyes. They were almost waiting for a gag. They were waiting for, this guy isn't serious, is he? And then you do it for that long that people think, is this guy okay? Is he totally delusional? Because by day, I'm cleaning. I'm then training, because I love to train and always have loved to train. And then by night, I'm smashing out emails, 10 emails a day, trying to find the right person to contact. Invariably, no one ever responds. If they do, it's with bad news. But you will not find out the answer unless I try. And so I had this goal in my mind, I had this ambition, and it then got to the point that I was so far down the line that I could no longer use my degree, because why would a company employ somebody that's 4 years post-graduation when they could have somebody who's 4 days post-graduation? I'm no longer a recent graduate. And so I'd essentially walked myself into a cul-de-sac of the only occupational opportunities would have been the same opportunities I'd have had at 16 years old. And so I then had no choice but to continue. And there are, I mean, I could count literally on my hand, on one hand, the amount of people that truly thought that it was ever going to happen. And Paul Ozzie was one. And it was a phenomenally tough time. But I happen to believe in God, and I believe God has given me a stubbornness and a kind of a perseverance and determination. I've had some incredible people that have believed in me. My mum, who I'm currently quarantining with, who's always backed me to the hill. And so there's been that, and then there's just been a sense of, well, my worst fear is waking up at 50 years old and not knowing if something would ever materialize. I can deal with answers I don't like. I can't deal with questions I don't have the answers to. And so that was kind of my mantra, that was my mindset. And on the good days, I was fine, I persevered and I sent the emails out. On the bad days, it was a case of, right, get yourself out of bed. And that's the objective for the day. But it was tough, but it's kind of got me to where I am.
It's a really good point, because the podcast is not, it is about sports, but I think there's such a fine line between sports people and entrepreneurs. You've got to have you've got to have the same attributes. I think you've got to be determined. You've got to you've got to be disciplined. You've got to be doing everything that you did, and you've got to take the no's that everybody's giving you. You think about something else. Go and get a proper job. So when you talk about those things that you're going through, and there must have been days that you must have cut yourself off because of the negatives that you were receiving.
Yeah, totally. It's, you know, you can become very solipsistic, you can become very introverted, you can become just very low. But I'm also a believer that not everyone is cut out for greatness. And I don't for a second think that I'm great, but that's certainly the ambition. And when you find out about the story of Usain Bolt, we see a happy-go-lucky guy who dances on the start line before he begins, and you think, wow, what it must be like to be him. But they don't even remember that before he broke the world record in 2008, he just managed to medal in 2007 Osaka against Tyson Gay and Wallace Spearman in just the 200 metres. People didn't see him when he left home at a very young age to train full-time in a sport that he didn't actually enjoy because he preferred cricket. When we talk about Rafa Nadal or Andy Murray, you don't talk about them leaving home at a young age and paying their dues. We don't see that bit. We focus as a society and as a world on destinations and not journeys. And I think
yeah.
one of the things in schools is that we teach and we inform, but we don't really inspire. We don't really, in my opinion, advise on how to thrive, on how to overcome, on how to never give up, or when you get knocked down, how you get back up. We say, if you get knocked down, you get back up, and that's fine as an anecdote, but how do you physically do it? And so those are things that I've learned about myself. I'm not the hardest guy in the room at all. I can't hit very hard. I can't take a very good shot, but I guarantee you one thing, I'll get up more times than the guy to the left of me and the guy to the right of me.
Radzi, honestly, I literally, and call me stupid or whatever, but I feel I know you already. Once I started talking with Paul, I feel that you're already a kindred spirit with me because it's all about that getting back up again. It's all about when you fall down. It's all the way you've got to build yourself back up again. You've got to pick yourself back up. And there are some individuals that will always pick you up. I wanted to say at the beginning of the interview, I wanted to say, and I wanted to do it on purpose because I wanted to see your reaction, because I wanted to say to you, you're so lucky to be in the position that you're in right now. It's got nothing to do with it. It's like, and that's why we're talking about right now, the studying that you had to do, the cleaning that you had to do to fund your going to London and doing your show reels and all that kind of stuff. And all those things that you had to do, it was not luck. It was you picking yourself back up and having people around you that didn't get you to the top where you are now, but actually get you to a stage where it put you on that level. It helped you to get up to that next thing. So your story is phenomenal. And I wanted to specifically share that with people and bring some attention to it, only because of one thing. You don't have to be on your own. All you've got to do is look around you. There's people there that's going to help you and assist you, never give in on those dreams. And that brings me into the next thing with you is it, okay, so you've had these dreams, and then all of a sudden, when was it the first time you've done, was it the Olympics in 2012 that you got your job with yeah.
So the Olympics was my first big presenting gig, but it was actually for free. It was regarded as work experience. So what actually happened was in 2012, part of the proposal they put forward to the IOC was that every single sport would have what they call live presentation. And that was one of their points of difference. The problem was they hadn't really worked out how they were going to do that in practice, because they thought they'll have one presenter who does the sport. Well, I worked on weightlifting, and weightlifting started at 9 a.m. and finished at 9 p.m. And you're not going to have a guy talking for 12 hours spread across 2 weeks. So what they actually did was there were two presenters, one of whom got paid, the other bloke, and one of whom didn't, me. And that was fine, because again, I'm paying my dues. I'm trying to get an opportunity. I'm going to have 8,000 people in front of me spread over the 2 weeks. Perhaps somebody in the crowd might see me and think, oh, that's somebody we could employ. That's somebody we could use. And so that actually wasn't paid. The first ever proper paid gig that I did that was regular was a show called Wild, and that preceded Blue Peter. So Wild was on a channel called CBBC. It was about animals and adventure. And it was while I was a runner, while I was an intern at CBBC, and I was on at that point, I think £40 a day, and that just got me into a hostel. No, in fact, I had to leave the hostel because I couldn't afford the hostel. There you go. I had to go into illegal accommodation with mice running through the kitchen, and it just got me enough money to get me from Loughborough, where I was still a sub-warden, which was free accommodation. All I had to do was be on call for students. I had to do that job whilst pretending I was in Loughborough when I was actually in Manchester, living in illegal accommodation to allow me to do the internship to get £40 a day, but I was going to be close to the people that might be able to give me an opportunity. And so whilst I was being an intern, I knew about this new show called Wild. They wanted someone with an extreme sports background. And that's where my skeleton bobsleigh came in. And so I went for a screen test, got the job. That was 10 weeks, every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. live. And that was unbelievable. I'll never forget it. And then off the back of that, the very final week, a man called Ewan Vinicum, who then became my boss on Blue Peter, said, we'd like to have a meeting with you. Now, I'd been to lots of meetings. Most of them got cancelled, but invariably it was to say, hi, nice to meet you. Let's stay in touch. And really what they meant is, hi, nice to meet you. Let's never stay in touch. And in this particular one, they actually sat me down and said, we'd like you to become the 37th Blue Peter presenter. And I'm not an emotional guy, but when I heard those words, I cried. And the rest of the meetings, Ewan Vinicum, Cheryl Taylor, all I heard for the rest of this meeting was 4 weeks, October you'll be starting, because it was just unbelievable. And they told me I could not tell anyone, otherwise the job would be off the cards, off the table. And so with that, I called 2 people. One was my girlfriend at the time, and the other one was Paul. And because my girlfriend at the time was working, she was in an office, she couldn't really react, but she was really, really pleased for me. I then called Paul, and I said, Paul, where are you? He said, I'm at home. I said, is anyone else there? He said, no. And I told him, and I won't repeat what he said, but let's just say he expressed through vernacular just how chuffed he was for me. And it may have been exclusively with 4-letter words, but he was delighted for me. And I remember jumping up and down while he was shouting, and it was a moment I'll never, ever forget.
He's just said that he cried for you. It's like it's kind of one of those stories that you wanted to be a Blue Peter presenter since you was 10. It's like these are only dreams, right? But you had to go through all of this stuff, this journey that you went on. It's just I want to get emotional too. It's a fantastic story. It's just like you want to give that to everybody and say, hey, listen, whatever you want to do, just go and do it. But that's a
The only thing I
fantastic.
would say is that you mentioned about there not being luck. I would actually argue, I don't necessarily believe in the word luck per se, but I've been very fortunate in that I've had the most supportive family, number one. I was in a position where I could explore my dreams, and throughout my life, I've had people that have said, go for your dreams. And I
Yep.
also knew there was a safety net if it went pear-shaped. I was never going to be homeless. Whereas if you are in a country on your own, you may not have that privilege. If you have children with mouths to feed, you may not have that privilege. There'll be a real cost to you failing. And so I did feel in many ways like I am privileged in the position that I was in, that I didn't have all the necessary opportunities, but I felt like I was given the tools to be able to at least enter the fight, if that makes sense.
Nice one.
And so, yeah, I don't put it down to luck, but I do feel very fortunate in that, yeah, a lot was given to me to enable me to even enter that journey.
So let's go on to your sporting stuff that you're doing as well. Blue Peter, amazing, fantastic, unbelievable, and we'll touch on some of your other TV stuff as well. But you're an accomplished martial arts expert too, right?
I did a bit of karate, yeah. I used to love karate, and I still love it. Grew up watching the likes of, I mean, I could bore you to death with Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Angela Mao, Benny the Jet Okides, Cynthia Rothrock, China O'Brien. It's these guys were they were superheroes to me, real life superheroes. And so I then took up karate, latterly competed in karate, and just loved it. And it was partly because at the time there were talks of it being a part of the Olympics. It never happened in the end. In fact, no, it is happening in Tokyo, but until that point, it wasn't going to happen. But yes, I loved karate, the agility, the flexibility, the strategy. Yeah, wonderful sport.
You keep on saying about this bobsleigh, bobsleigh.
Yeah, skeleton. Yeah.
What skeleton? How difficult was that? Because you did actually do quite well in it from a UK perspective, right? You come in the top 10.
Yeah, so what it was is it started because I was on a show called Gladiators, which again, if you're perhaps from America, you might have heard of US Gladiators. If you're in the UK, you probably have heard of it. If you haven't been to either country, it's a show where you essentially take Joe Public, who perhaps have a little bit of a speciality, whether it's athletics or cricket or football, and they take on these larger than life Adonises in various gladiatorial events. And in the 90s, it was one of my favourite all-time shows, and it came to a channel called Sky One. I applied for it when I was at university, and it was wonderful. off the back of that, met a guy called Greg, who then became a very good friend of mine, and he was a GB coach. And he said to me, you have the profile for a skeleton athlete. So I went down to Bath University, where they have a push track where you can practice the start. Absolutely loved it and thought, this is for me. And that's what I was using at Loughborough, at the leisure centre, sports facilities, to earn money, that could take me across to Germany, to America, to Norway, to get on the ice tracks there and get ice time. That's what it's all about. It's about ice time, number one, and then the push start, number two. And so Paul helped me become an athlete, essentially, and I worked on my push start with him. And then I took myself abroad to work on the actual mile of sliding. And it's a euphoria like I cannot articulate to you. It's the biggest rush you will have in your life. It's I called him from America. I called Greg from America because I was there. It was dangerous. I was hurting myself, and I was on a payphone, and I had precisely 59 seconds to get everything I could out of him. And he said to me, Radzi, how long have we got? And I said, about 24 seconds. He went, okay, if you are scared, everything will happen quicker. When it happens quicker, you will hurt yourself, you'll be out of control. When you get on the track, encourage the speed, embrace the speed, wish for more speed. It will slow down. And so, right, okay, am I going to actually do this? Encourage more of this thing that's going to result in impending death? Got onto the track in Park City, Utah, and I was one mini scenario of Radzi living in accommodation that wasn't especially luxurious, but got myself to the track, on the top of the track, and as it came to corner 4 and the speed hits you, you drop about 3 building stories in about 2 seconds, and you are headfirst on ostensibly a tea tray, your chin maybe 2 inches from the ice, and I'm now going to encourage this speed, and as soon as I did that, your body relaxes, and all of a sudden, in the same way as if you're in a boxing ring and you think, he's going to hit me, he's going to hit me, he's going to hit me, and you're tense and you won't see it coming, the next thing you'll know, you're looking up at the lights. Instead, when you accept that he's going to punch, but that's an opportunity for me to throw my own counter, everything slowed down. And it was this really counterintuitive sensation of, whoa. And then you feel like you're entering warp speed, but you're almost watching it from a Star Trek movie where you're going, I know I'm going so quickly, but this is, and then it changed the game for me. And I loved skeleton. It was fantastic because I've got a size 28 waist, so I'm quite slim. I could fit into the sled beautifully. It was about finesse. It's about touch. You then reflect on what you've done, where it went wrong, where it went right. You've got a strategy to try and enter corners, what they call either early or late, which basically means at the left or right hand side of the track, depending on which way it turns. And you then put the pieces of the jigsaw together. And if you were to do it and I were to do it, we'll have different pieces to different jigsaws. And so there's no one right way. But it culminated eventually in me going to the GB trials, the British trials in 2010. And they'd said that if we come top 10, we then get to qualify and represent Great Britain in 3 different tiers of competition: World Cup, Intercontinental, and European. And I came 8th, and unfortunately they weren't expecting somebody from outside of their funded system to come inside the top 10, and I did that, and then they changed the ruling. They changed the rules around what was going on, and so then I wasn't able to represent Great Britain, and it was the most devastating news I'd had, and that's what led to me feeling really, really low. I'd sacrificed so much for this, and they said, look, we're impressed, come back next year and there might be a place for you. And I thought, I can't keep giving up years of my life when I don't necessarily trust the people to be honest and accountable and whatever else. But that one decision there resulted in my, if you like, that myopia that I had, where I was only focused on skeleton, turned into what else can I do? And that's how TV happened. But I'll always be grateful for skeleton, because Wild, that TV show, wouldn't have happened without skeleton. And therefore Wild, Blue Peter wouldn't have happened without Wild, and everything I've done since wouldn't have happened without Blue Peter. So it all lines up.
It's about the journey. We keep on saying about the journey. And I want to bring something. This was even at my age, 53. Gladiators was a big part of our stuff, and you came in the semi-finals, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to sneak through into the semi-finals, and it was just euphoria. It was so good. The thing you didn't know about it was the quarterfinals for me finished at 2 in the morning, the day before. I'm then there the next day at 9 a.m. ready to go for the semi-finals. And it was, you actually got to win £50,000 on this show. And at that point in my bank account, I think I'd be surprised if I had more than £50 sterling in my account. So £50,000, are you joking? I mean, I'll be honest with you, Steve, any free stuff that was there that wasn't pinned down, it was going in my pockets. Protein bars, protein pat, thank you very much. Radzi will have that. Yeah, I've still got some Olympic rings from, I mean, it was 2008, 12 years ago. It's still in my mum's garage this day.
Dear me. And then all of these things. So as you said, a lot of the work that you've done is for free. It was just to get you into that next level, hoping that somebody was going to notice you. What other sports? You were there was another sport that you were good at. Paul was telling me was long jump, but unfortunately you had an injury.
Yeah, so long jump was something that I knew that plyometrically I was relatively gifted at. Now, when I say relatively, that's because when you go to Loughborough and you realise what actual gift looks like. So, for example, I thought I had quite a good box jump. And for the uninitiated, box jump, line up wooden boxes and then stack them as high as you can. And you either rep out on them or you use it to do depth jumps where you jump off and react off the floor. 101 different uses for it. So I could get my box jump roughly around nipple height. Somewhere between nipple and chin height was my PB for standing next to the box, swing your arms down, jump up onto the box. Now, you could argue that it's about mobility more so than, let's say, plyometric capability, because when you jump, if you were that flexible that you could lift your feet to your chin, then you actually don't need to have a very good jump. All you're doing is displaying your mobility. But cut to, we're in power-based gym, and the height of the box is around 1 meter 10, I would say. A guy was doing double leg jumps onto this box and feeling pretty good about himself. He then challenges Paul to see if Paul could do it. Paul did it single leg. So he stands on one leg and hops onto the box. I mean, it was, oh man, the sights and sounds you'd see inside that gym, the PBs that people used to have, whether it was Harry Akinzariti with his 190 kilos front squat for a double. Now, he's a British sprinter, weighed about 85 kilos. So over double body weight for a front squat, doing it for a double. Whether it's Rich Ellis doing back squats for about 300 kilos, benching 260 kilos. There were just phenomenal specimens inside this thing. So I wasn't bad when it came to plyometrics, and I wanted to do the long jump. But that's what, if you like, resulted in me doing skeleton, because long jump got me onto gladiators, and gladiators got me into skeleton. And the whole idea of the long jump run up about 30 meters lends itself very well to the start of a push start with skeleton.
It's phenomenal listening to your story, and you've presented so many things. You've presented. There's just so many to choose from. Okay, even songs of praise. It's like I noticed that, from a religion perspective, that must have been pretty good for you too. It was.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I'm a Christian, and so to be part of, if you like, the pretty much the only religious show, if you like, on TV that's, again, a show that's been around for many years.
Yeah, many years.
And what's also really nice is it particularly resonates with a demographic of a certain age. So I would say people probably 60 plus is their average age listener, I'd say. And so what that means is I've worked in kids TV, which would be very much a different market. It would then be a religious market. It would then be people of a certain age. But then, you know, for example, when I went out to Qatar, and that was for the World Athletics Championships last year, I loved the place. And it was awesome finding out about, so I've got mates who are Muslim, but actually hearing about the Muslim experience in a totally different country, and trying the karak tea that was, I mean, I like sweet tea. That was something else. That was gorgeous. And, you know, seeing the pearls, seeing the fish market, seeing the incredible development that's going on there, meeting wonderful people who are proud to be from the area. such a rich mix of a tapestry of different ethnicities and countries and backgrounds. Such a wonderful place, and the stadium, the Aspire Academy. There's so much going on in Qatar.
Unbelievable, yeah.
I love the place, love it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful place, and I wanted to, and I did literally want to touch because I was going to bring it in saying that how religion here, especially here, and it's so powerful, so powerful. The religion is the bedrock, the kind of it. Their lives revolve around it, and it's so powerful, and it is so good. It's kind of, you've got such nice people here, and as you said, Qatar is a wonderful place. I'm going to go on to another question now. Okay, where's your journey? What's your journey from now on? What have you got planned? What's your plans?
So my plan over the next few days is to stay inside a building and not leave that building because we are in lockdown. But outside of that, it's a number of things really. I should have been working at the Olympics in Tokyo for Eurosport. That's been postponed to next year. I should right now be in The Hague in Holland for the Invictus Games. That's for the BBC, and that's about essentially ex-servicemen's
Yeah,
road to recovery. It's a wonderful event to be part
brilliant.
of.
Yeah,
I should be working at the World Snooker Championships in August. That's in Sheffield. I may be working at the World's Strongest Man, which will be in Florida. That's in November. I should have been working at the World Indoor Athletics Champs in China. I mean, this is making my life sound very glamorous. It has to be said. It's not. It's normally me on a train, keeping my eyelids from falling asleep because I'm going to a next place. But yeah. So a number of things, and I'm actually flirting with the idea of doing skeleton bobsleigh again, actually, and potentially just training in it and going back because I just loved it, and I miss that element of training. And yeah, outside of those major things, there's lots of other bits and bobs I'm doing, writing a kids book about encouraging kids to get active and move. But I'm actually in a space now where I'm very open to ideas, and even hearing about Paul moving to Qatar and his wonderful experience there, it's made me think, oh, I could be interested in that because I happen to like the heat, and I know it's 47 degrees there right now, but I happen to like the heat, and it must be wonderful to be part of something at its point of growth because there's so much excitement there, whether it's Al Jazeera or beIN Sports, whether it is the World Cup that's coming, whether it is the buildings that you're seeing going up left, right, and centre. It just seems like it's a happening place with a fervour and an ambition that I think, oh, I would like to be part of that. So yeah, I'm just very open, Steve.
you would be, without a shadow of doubt, you would be an ideal person to come out here because, as you said, it's just a fantastic place, and you would just excel because I think that with your journey and with your experiences, you could teach and empower the next generation. Honestly, you could with what you've gone through, you could really give some stuff back. Honestly, one of the things is, what ambitions have you got now? Is there much you want to achieve? What's the ultimate that you want to achieve, or have you already done that?
No, so it's a fine balance. One thing I've learned is that things in life the only straight lines in progression are normally man-made, and that whether it's we look at landscapes or whether we look at our lives, they reflect almost a share price index more so than a perfect linear curve. And so where I'd like to go is I've got a number of ideas I'd like to look into. So one is about it's actually called the ultimate selfie. So it's about everyone goes to a country and they take a selfie. Well, what happens if you took the ultimate selfie? Almost you had a selfie on steroids. What would that look like? How would it be? What could I do, for example, in Qatar? Maybe I could go in with the fish in the fish market and actually go underwater and take a shot there. Maybe I could take a shot from the top of the Burj Khalifa Stadium. Maybe who knows? But the world would be your oyster. And so that's one idea I'd love to explore. I happen to be really into politics and current affairs and news, so there might be an opportunity there. I might be doing some more radio stuff in the UK, and so I don't necessarily have a specific objective as such, but my main criteria are I want to learn, I want to be passionate about it, and I want to grow. And those are my big three, really. And I also would like to have stories to tell. And so if it's doing something that bores me and isn't of interest to me, but it pays excellent money, that doesn't really do anything for me. It's about meeting people, like with yourself. We spoke before we came on air, as you were talking about hearing about people's stories. To me, they are the best stories. It's not fantasy tales, not sci-fi, real people. And it might just be the mundane, the mondial. It might just be the story of a man who started with nothing, and maybe he doesn't even have that much, but maybe what he taught people around him, maybe the father that he was or the mother that she was, maybe it was the fact that she'd lost something incredible but still persevered on. To me, those are the absolute best stories, and I'd love
Oh,
to be part of them.
I, our whole existence as human beings is been through storytelling, and it's the way that we really do storytelling. We storytell through our children. We try to give them the right examples. We try to teach them in the right way. So and it is so important that we make sure that we listen to people's stories, because we're just listening. You give them inspiration. You give them the belief. And that's another thing. If you would with and as you said, the story's so important, and that's what we do on In the Game, without a shadow of a doubt. It's all about stories. It's all about teaching others how they can move forward. Even if they're not sports people, how are they going to move? They want to be in the sporting industry. Give them all the help and assistance. With you now, if there was a person that was on their journey, or they were starting out on their journey, and they've got this road in front of them, and it's not always the easiest of roads, what would the best advice would you give them right now?
Um, so I once heard from a guy called DJ Semtex, who is, I mean, interestingly, he's a DJ on a radio station called One Extra, a BBC radio station called One Extra. Now, he doesn't really speak about this, but he's got a prosthetic arm. So on one side of his body, he has from the shoulder down, he has no arm, just uses the prosthetic one that doesn't move. Now, he's one of the best mixers of music I've ever seen. And if you've ever seen DJ decks, you'd have two records, and between them you have a tweet that you move with your finger. So you'd mix, and then you'd scratch, and you'd move the tweet. But fundamentally, you need two hands to make that work. Well, he uses his mouth to actually move the tweet. To watch it is poetry in motion. But I once went to a night that he was performing in, and someone said to him, Semtex, do you have any advice for someone like me who's an aspiring DJ? And he paused and then said, no cliches. And Semtex looked up and he said, I don't know if this is advice. He said, but all I would say that I've learned in this industry is it's 20% talent, 80% hard work. And when I heard that, I thought, yeah, okay. And so there's that for me. It's the 80-20 rule. The other one for me is about controlling the controllables. So I can't control if somebody else is privileged and is given an opportunity by virtue of the family they're in, the surname they have, the contacts they have. I can't control how good looking they are, and maybe they get an opportunity because of that. I can't control any of those things. With myself, I can't change my race, my height, where I'm from, I can't change any of that. All I can control is me. And I decide if I'm going to give up. And if it gets down to the lowest ebb, if you're not getting anything from what you're doing, you always have one decision left. And that's, will I give up? And there was a story about a man in a prisoner of war camp. I believe he was a priest in the Second World War. I apologize if it wasn't the Second World War. But essentially, he and a number of people were kept in pits in the floor, and they were fed with scraps. And when he came out, this man was extremely positive. A lot of people committed suicide. There were really dark stories about cannibalism and executions and whatever else. And this priest came out, and they said, how are you so positive? And he said, well, we always have the freedom. He said, what do you mean you had your freedom? He said, well, everything was taken away from you. You had no freedom. He said, no. We always have the freedom to decide whether or not we're going to give up. And he said, I had that option, and I never did give up. I didn't want to give up, because that was my choice. And again, something about that resonated with me, and I think of Samuel L. Jackson getting his first opportunity at 48 years old. I think about people, let's say Kanye West in the music industry, being written off when he's actually a part of the label that he then becomes successful in. I think about so many people who've succeeded in spite of insurmountable odds and difficulties, but it boils down to a refusal to lose or a refusal to give in, and the fact that in most things it is 80-20, 20% genetics or 20% talent, and it's 80% hard work. And that's where the biggest opportunity is. If you outwork the opposition, in my opinion, you've infinitely, almost exponentially increased your probability of success. That was a very long piece of advice, but there you go.
I am sorry. Okay, after this interview, I'm going to be kicking myself that I didn't ask all these questions or get over all of your career. It's an incredible career, and to finish on what you've just said there is just fantastic, because you, sir, has been an inspiration to me today, and just getting to know you even offline, talking with Paul and the stories. I wish I talked about the bobsleigh. That wasn't very good, because he said ask him about the bobsleigh. It was Mark 10, or it wasn't even. It was close to being a tin tray, right, by all accounts.
Yeah, it was basically like asking Usain Bolt to race in Jesse Owens' spikes. It was it wasn't fit for purpose. It was, but I'll tell you what, Steve, I'll happily come on here again and we can talk about some other things as well.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. You, sir, are amazing, and I'm so glad that you came on the show, and I'm so glad that I got this very valuable time from you. I just hope that everybody today has listened and got from it what they wanted to, because there are so many messages in with what you spoke about today. And I do really, Radzi, honestly, I do really appreciate you coming on and sharing, because I know, even if it's just one person that you've influenced today, you've made a difference. We've all made a difference. And I think that's the opportunity that we get as individuals, and we've been on a journey that we can show others. And you've definitely showed so many today.
Well, thank you, but also is what I genuinely, part of the reason I was more than happy to be part of this was essentially your humility, mate, and that really comes through with every podcast that I've heard that you've done. And it's some people, when they conduct interviews, it's more about them than the person they're trying to actually find out about, and that's the opposite with you. You're in every sort of nuance of your voice is humble, and it's I want to find out about the person, and it's about celebrating life. And like you say, if it can help one person, then perfect. And if it even just makes somebody think for half a second, then it really has done the job. And I look forward to the next time we chat, mate.
You are definitely, please. If you say so, I'm going to get you back on the show. It's a definite fact. And maybe we can get Paul to come on too, and we could have our
double
coffee.
Header. Yes.
Yes, that would be fantastic. Everybody, you have got. Radzi has got an incredible career. Just go and look on Wikipedia. That's all you've got to do, is look him up and see what he's done. It's an incredible achievement. I'm so fortunate you've come onto the show today and shared it with our listeners. So Radzi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Everyone, thank you so much. Next week's guest is another great guy. It's Troy Townsend. He is a legend in the UK. He's done so much with Kick It Out in football. So yeah, he's coming on next Saturday. Do you know Troy at all? Have you heard of Troy?
I know the name. I know some of the stuff he's done. I haven't met him myself, but I'll look forward to hearing that one.
Yeah, he's going to be a great guest. Radzi, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody, once again, thanks for listening. Yeah, thank you. Cheers, Radzi.